And I think that's always the biggest mistake that students make. The students who end up on application renovation versus the students here on mission accepted is you were able to show this is who I am. Take it or leave it. Mission Accepted Season 2, Episode 6. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing great. I'm excited to chat with you. I'm excited to be recording videos again. We've had a little hiatus and scheduling issues and lots of stuff going on behind the scenes, but I'm excited to be recording again, and I'm excited to share your story and your application. Thanks for coming on and being vulnerable and talking about it.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
What do you think it was that led you to be successful with your first application cycle?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I made a really good effort to apply early. I had my primary in the first week of June, and most of my secondaries were done July, couple into August, but they always take more time than you think they're going to.
Yeah.
And I think I had a pretty good school list. I applied to all of my state schools and tried to pick schools that I thought resonated with my personal beliefs and fit. And I think definitely my stats helped me kind of get reviewed earlier than other applicants, but it was definitely my story and extracurriculars that, kind of allowed me to be successful early on.
Before we jump into the application and looking at those extracurriculars and personal statement, anywhere along your interview trail, talking to interviewers, talking to anyone who you talked with, did it come up at all about your application and how you wrote stuff and the stories that you told? Did any of that come out?
Not so far. I think I had one interviewer look at my application and go, "How did you do so many things?" which I thought was kind of funny. But nothing specific. No.
Yeah. It's a very interesting comment because I read, I'm pretty sure it was your comment that I read about your success academically was helped by the fact that you didn't do a lot activity-wise starting out college, which is a very common mistake that students make. And yet here you are, accepted to medical school, getting this comment, look at all of the things that you've done, right?
Yeah, I think I started slow. Yeah, I started slow. I think my first semester, I did nothing but school. I attended a couple club meetings here or there, kind of got my bearings, got my routine. And then slowly but surely, I just kept saying yes to things until, COVID hit, but I continued to be active throughout. So I think it kind of snowballed and, I like being busy. It's fine. It's all good.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's go and jump into your application. And as you mentioned, you submitted very early on, June 3rd, which is awesome. And we're verified less than a month later. Still crazy. It took nearly a month with that.
Yeah, and I had no issues with transcripts or anything. Everything went smoothly, and it still took that long. I think everyone's kind of catching on that you got to be early. So
yeah, if only the AAMC would know that they should hire some more people to verify, and then it would be so much better. But anyway, we go through your application. No institutional actions, no disadvantaged essay, or marking yourself as disadvantaged. We get to college and we see some dual enrollment credits from high school. Luckily, you did mostly well in those classes. A lot of students will take dual enrollment and then slack off and then be like, oh, I have this huge kind of hurdle to overcome because I thought it was just free money taking college classes in high school. But you have lots and lots of great grades here looking throughout your transcript. And we get to your kind of GPA table with your science GPA being 3.87 and cumulative GPA at a 3.9. So academically speaking, no doors were closed for your grades. We get to your Mcat score. 515, fantastic score. Again, no doors are closed because of a 515, which is awesome. Cars was your weakest section. Talk about that.
It was kind of a crapshoot. Every practice exam I took, I was getting anywhere between a 125 and a 130. And I ended up really liking all of the passages that were on my exam, but I guess it just didn't pan out for me. I'm not an English girl myself, but luckily, my other sections were able to kind of balance that out. But
okay, yeah, your other sections definitely help. So
yeah.
still a really strong score all around. So great job there.
Thank you.
So obviously academics, stats play a big part in the application. For you, there were no concerns there. And this is mission accepted. So you got into medical school. In my application renovation videos, I'll have students with the exact same stats not get into medical school with some potential issues elsewhere. And so let's jump into your activities and see potentially where you were able to not fall into some common mistakes that students who end up on application renovation may fall into. So you have your honors, awards, recognitions here, and you have this list here, which is perfect. Lots of students are concerned. How do I do this? How do I list all these? Do I list them? Do I put them in individual things? But I think a perfect way to do this is just listing them. Put 0 hours, which is all you need to do. So that's great. I was very confused when I saw your how you labeled your durations of things. And so your first one here, your PCA, your patient care assistant, you have 121 to 521, 521 to 822. And I put a question mark here. And then I saw that you did it again. And I'm like, oh, I see what she did. There's this very common recommendation that I don't recommend students do at all, but it's a very common recommendation to show pre-application and post-application hours. I'm assuming that's why you did that.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to show that this is what I anticipate doing during my gap year, but not trying to show them that maybe I'm, overestimating because I plan to do so much, showing them I've already did this much. Here's what I plan to do. Especially because I am taking a gap year, and obviously that gives you a lot of room to get a lot of hours in.
Yeah. So definitely not something that needs to be done. The AAMC doesn't, like the AMCAS instruction guide tells you to estimate out hours and estimate out until you start medical school, but it doesn't give you any guidelines of you must put it as a separate thing. And why I don't recommend it is I've seen issues where that bottom number, the 521 to 822, doesn't accurately get transmitted to the medical school. And so all they see is that first number of 300 hours from January to May of 21, and then they don't see the estimated hours in the future. And so it looks weird. And it's like, well, did you do it? Are you doing it? Did you stop? I'm applied to medical school, so I don't need to do anything anymore. I think it just leaves, I don't trust the AAMC with anything, and it just leaves room for error when you're adding in that extra date. Again, it's a very common concern of wow, it's a lot of hours, and it's a lot of estimating out these future hours, and are they going to think poorly of me that I'm trying to inflate these numbers? The AMCAS instruction guide, as of now, doesn't say to do that, so I wouldn't do it. Just a general recommendation. Nothing wrong with it. I just see issues on the back end.
Right, and I got lucky, but maybe I wouldn't have gotten lucky.
Yeah, and so you have this PCA thing, and you did a great job with most of your descriptions in terms of showing impact and showing this story, which I love. I love stories. For you, as you were going through this, thinking about how you wanted to write your descriptions and what you wanted to show here, what was your thought process and what you wanted to convey in these 1,325 characters?
Yeah, I definitely found it wasn't a lot of characters, so I knew I had to be really smart with how I used them and the things I said. And I definitely took a lot of pieces of your advice, not listing job descriptions, kind of doing the bare minimum just to, reiterate what I did. But most people know what a PCA or a nurse's aide does, so I didn't feel like I had to go into too much depth. And then I really want to make sure my personality shined through. I didn't want to have, a cookie cutter application that anyone could have written. So I tried to add little stories or situations that stuck out to me wherever I went with my application. And yeah. That was about it.
Yeah. So you have this story, and then the takeaway, right? That this interaction motivated me to continue forming such relationships with my future patients, right? That's the impact that this experience had on you, which is great. You weren't trying to show like how it's going to help you in the future. You didn't show how it's going to prepare you to be a doctor. You didn't need to go into the sales pitch. You're like, this is this small little impact that this action had on me. So great job.
Thank you.
Volunteer firefighter. You had this volunteer firefighter. You have an EMT right below it, and EMT, volunteer firefighter kind of go hand in hand. Talk about the volunteer firefighter position, because I think in your notes you said it came up a bunch. Everyone wanted to talk about this actual activity. Why do you think that everyone wanted to talk about this?
Yeah, I think it was something unique that a lot of the adcoms reading and my interviewers just hadn't seen before. And they were really curious as to how I got involved, if it came before EMT, if it became after, and kind of what I did. And I had one interviewer that was like, you actually go inside burning buildings. And it was, a funny talking point. We ended up talking about how I'm like 5'3" and really short and all this other kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it was something unique that stuck out to them. And yeah.
So you used numbers here, which is great, right? As a member, you responded to at least 200 calls annually, right? Showing numbers of that impact, which is great. I love it. EMT, again, you use numbers, right? Talking about 600 calls, 600 unique patients. Then you said here, but my time with them is always cut short. And here's one potential mistake that I think you made, and not a huge mistake, but something that I don't think you needed to do. And it's very common for students to use the activity description as an extension of why medicine, as an extension of the personal statement. And so instead of focusing on all of the joy and good and impact of being an EMT, you went right into, I was an EMT, but it wasn't enough. So I think it's more of a distraction than really helping in this situation. So again, obviously it worked out for you. You got your acceptances, not a problem, but a small tweak that I don't think you needed to do there.
Okay.
And great stories throughout. Again, I'm not going to point out all of the great stories because they were all there, which is awesome. So you have some leadership, which is great, teaching, tutoring, teaching assistant, again, listing things, which is the perfect way to do this. Students are very concerned and unsure of like, well, I had 3 different tutoring jobs or whatever, and do I do them separately? Do I list them? What do I do? And you did perfect here, right? Just list them, give some date ranges, and if you have some room for a little impact statement like you did, great. You did great. That's exactly how I recommend doing it. The fun thing about the activity descriptions is there are no rules.
Right.
The stressful thing about activity descriptions is there are no rules. But it allows you to kind of be flexible and have it fit your specific needs, and this is the perfect way to do that. All right. So, again, volunteer coordinator, extracurricular activities, numbers. You have over 40 students, 500 hours of volunteering, showing numbers with impact, which is great. I love it. Poster presentation, talking about that, not a huge thing. Not every activity has to have this, oh my gosh, blow me out of the water reflection and description. Here's this, like, it doesn't sound like it was that big of a thing for you, but you wanted to put it in there. And it reads that way, like it wasn't that big of a thing. And my assumption is, because you have a poster presentation, there's going to be some research associated with it. And so I'm going to kind of keep that in the back of my mind to go, okay, I hopefully will read some more about this and see what else is going on. Science club volunteer, another good story, right? Just story after story after story. Clinic volunteer here, traveling to rural communities and utilizing Spanish skills and all this stuff. Again, good story. Talking about Mateo there. And then we get to your undergraduate research assistant, and here's the research that goes with the poster presentation and what this meant to you. And being at this OB-GYN office and interacting with these patients and seeing them for much more than just, oh, you're having a baby, but everything else that goes along with it. Again, really good story showing who you are through this lens of this experience, and not, well, this experience gave me good communication skills and taught me how to use regression analysis to make sure I know statistics and blah, 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 right? It's just, who are you? And that's what I love here. It's just, you're not in sales pitch mode. You're just telling the story of who you are and what you did throughout your activity, which is awesome. I love it.
Thanks.
Shadowing. Right? Again, shadowing. Students are like, what do I do with shadowing? I shadowed 5 different physicians. List them. Piece of cake. No biggie there. Intramural Sports. Again, I love that you have intramural stuff on here. Hobbies I love on your application, because it just, again, it shows who you are. And going from volleyball to darts. I love darts.
Yeah, I thought that was a cute COVID story, because volleyball was not okay during COVID, so they bought a bunch of dartboards.
Yeah.
Which was equally fun.
But it doesn't make sense, because volleyball, depending on what you're doing, right? Volleyball could be outside if it's beach volleyball. University of Florida, we have beach volleyball courts. Northern New York, not so much an outside thing. But one inside sport to another inside sport probably still doesn't make sense COVID-wise, but hey, whatever. Club president, so some leadership here. Again, good use of numbers. 75 members, 90 underclassmen. Great job just showing impact through numbers. My one kind of bad comment, and it's not even that bad, is your lifeguard activity here. Your most meaningful statement seemed like it was mostly about Joe and not about you. So obviously Joe was very impactful in your life and a mentor for you, and that shows. But I think it probably was a little bit too much Joe and not enough about you. But still, storytelling, impact, all good stuff.
Yeah, I think what I was kind of trying to do there was show, how I got into emergency medicine and kind of the path I took. And going back to we haven't gotten my personal statement, but I opened with a story about lifeguarding.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to elaborate more.
Yeah.
And, I ended up working for the YMCA over the summer. They needed a camp EMT. So somehow I ended up back at the YMCA once again. I have not escaped it.
Yeah.
Still trying.
I worked at the Y when I was in college as well, both as a trainer, personal trainer in the gym part of the Y, and then I was part of admin of the summer camp. Long hot days out on the asphalt at pickup when the cars would come, and I would know the cars, but I know that's Sally's mom, and here's Johnny's dad. And in Florida, where I was in Gainesville, we would have the chairs and sitting down waiting for cars to come. It was so hot that the chairs would sink into the asphalt because the asphalt would heat up and the metal on it would heat up. So yeah, crazy times. But I think it's interesting, that comment that you just made about I was hoping to show or trying to show the connection of what led me to being an EMT. I think it's the same comment that I made earlier about it being a distraction.
Right.
With your EMT activity description of, well, here I'm an EMT, but I'm going to show you how it wasn't enough. Here I'm a lifeguard, but I'm going to show you how it wasn't enough and what led me to be an EMT.
Right.
And I think the activity descriptions, in my mind, should be just individual siloed stories about that activity and not trying to interweave it all together.
Okay.
Right. My brain doesn't work very well for I have to remember that and this and what was that connected to. Just tell the story, especially for a most meaningful. Why was this activity most meaningful for you? And your answer really is, this activity was most meaningful for me because it led me to being an EMT. I'm like, well, I want to know more about being a lifeguard.
Yeah.
So, overall, fantastic activity descriptions, really showing who you are, showing kind of your lens on life and your interaction with all these different people, the impact that you've had, the impact it's had on you. Great variety of experiences all around. So great job with all of your activities.
Thank you.
And as everyone can see, taking a semester off your first year, making sure that you're a good student first and foremost, didn't hinder the fact that you were able to get a lot of stuff done. And then we get into your your personal statement. I want to talk to you about your personal statement.
Sure.
You had a very strong theme in your personal statement. What was it?
It was about patient advocation, I would say, in a nutshell. Maybe that's not what you got from it.
Yeah, it's
okay.
I didn't get patient advocate from it. I got more in what I highlighted here at the end of your very first paragraph. I expected to be silenced. I saw I guess advocate is a good word, but not necessarily patient advocate, but like female advocate. Like screw the patriarchy. Like, I am a strong female. You can't hold me back. And I wonder where that theme came from. It's obviously who you are. Obviously. Why do you think it played such a pivotal part of your personal statement?
I think I've definitely had a lot of experiences between firefighting and EMT that I've been in very male-dominated fields. And I think medicine was a male-dominated field up until very recently when the numbers have kind of shifted. But I just feel that, women aren't taken as seriously, women as patients, women as providers. And that's something that I felt that I personally had to overcome. And it's something that I want to take with me throughout my life, in my personal life, in my future practice as a physician. But yeah, and I feel like it was something where I was able to use that belief inside of me and connect a lot of different stories to it to try to make some sort of cohesive idea.
Okay. And so for you, a big part of why you want to be a physician is to be that advocate, especially for your female patients. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. I think a lot of that stemmed from having a pretty fair amount of OBGYN experience. But I think what I found was I didn't have to say that, I have to be an OBGYN. Like every single field of medicine, besides maybe like urology, has to do with females, So I thought that it wasn't kind of confining me inside the box of a certain specialty because obviously I don't know.
Women have bladders and urethras and they need urology services as well.
You're right.
It's very funny. We don't think of women with urology, but yeah,
we don't.
They need urologists as well. It's interesting. The women a lot of times, especially from an OBGYN standpoint, are ignored, right? We have this history of this diagnosis of hysteria, like, you just have hysteria, go like be crazy, woman. But we have like data on endometriosis not being diagnosed for like years, and women suffering from that, and men doctors and women doctors like, I don't know what's wrong with you, like, you're just crazy. And hopefully like we get better with that. And is it female voices being silenced? Is it ignorance around endometriosis and the just huge variety of symptoms that patients can have? Like, there's a lot out there, but it's good to have people that are out there advocating for those patients and making sure that women voices aren't being ignored for just because they have hysteria. It was an interesting take on a personal statement. Again, it's who you are, which at the end of the day is first and foremost what I think people need to put out there. And I think you did a really good job of tying in your own experiences, both personally, although you didn't really dive into that, you just kind of hinted at it, but also the experiences that you've had potentially as a firefighter, EMT, etc. I think potentially, and I'm a male here saying this, so take it for what it's worth. Potentially a little too negative in terms of like
Okay.
oh honey, like leave it to the men. Like I don't know if that was needed to get your point across about why you want to be a physician. I think it's more just general setup for everything you've been through, which is understandable to want to put it in there. And so I think it's okay. It gets back to, is it a distraction or is it not? And knowing that a lot of the people reading this, I'd be very interested to know like hard numbers on percentage men and women reading personal statements and applications. Knowing that, again, medicine in general is historically male dominated, and we have still lots of old crusty white guys running the show who are reading this, oh honey, leave that to the men, and you're putting in your personal statement, are they sitting there going, oh, she's going to be a difficult one to deal with?
Are they scared of me?
Are they going to be scared? Men are scared of very powerful women. I am married to one. I'm scared to death of her. So that's where I get a little like, is it too much? Is it not enough? At the end of the day, you be you, and know that there are going to be scared men out there who read that going, I don't want to deal with you.
It'd be interesting to know who read my personal statement, and if, you know, the places I got interviews at, was it a female reading it? I never even thought about that.
Yeah. It'd be very interesting to try to do some like retrospective digging to see who was reviewing. If it was another strong, powerful woman going, heck yeah, like death to the patriarchy, like of course, like there was a match made in heaven there. So that's funny. Anyway, overall, your personal statement was good, right? It talked about stories. You weren't overly trying to sell yourself. It just had this very strong message of like, don't mess with me because I'm a woman, which again, is it a distraction? Is it not? But I love it. The kind of final paragraph here, this super strong conclusion about what you hope to do, I loved. So talking about as a physician, right? Just setting up that transition. As a physician, here's what I hope to accomplish. Here's why you giving me a medical degree and that diploma is going to look great for you and impact patients in the future. So really, really strong conclusion there. So we get to the end of kind of the essay part of this, and we have great stats. Again, not closing any doors. We have great activities with activity descriptions that help me understand who you are. We have a personal statement that helps me understand your journey to medicine and a little bit more about kind of your moral compass and your passions, which may or may not hurt you, and may or may not help you, again, depending on who's reading those essays. And so we get to the end, and we get a picture of who you are and why you're doing this. And it's not going to be a good fit for every school. Nobody is a good fit for every school. It's just doesn't happen. So that's fine. You showed who you were. You didn't show who you thought they wanted you to be. And I think that's always the biggest mistake that students make. The students who end up on application renovation versus the students here on mission accepted is you were able to show, this is who I am. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And
I hope that, the fit, hopefully the schools that I got interviews and acceptance at are a good fit for me because they saw my application and agree with what I said and what I stand for.
1,000%. And that's always something I come back to. Students are concerned. Do I put that I'm part of the LGBT community? Do I put that I have bipolar or whatever? Do I put X, Y, or Z on my application? And I always come back to, you have two options. You either put it on or you leave it off. If you leave it off, and it's who you are, a big part of your identity, a big part of your passion, a big part of your kind of moral compass, and you end up at an institution that does not support that at all, you are not going to be happy. Or you put it on your application, you kind of reveal to the world who you are, like you did, and the schools that aren't going to like that aren't going to invite you for an interview. And the schools who are like, rock on, like are going to hopefully invite you for an interview and hopefully accept you after that. And it gives you a little bit of confidence that where you end up from a culture standpoint is going to fit well with who you are as a person. You get to the end of this. You talked about your school list, applying to most, if not all, of your state schools. Obviously, being in New York, lots of schools to apply to, which is very helpful. I feel bad for the Rhode Island folks out there. But you have lots of schools to choose from. Outside of the New York schools, you talked about trying to find schools that potentially were a good fit for you. How did you pick and choose schools?
I did a lot of browsing on the MSAR, like a lot, in trying to find like personal statement and then looking into like specific activities. And I think a lot of it came out too when I was doing research for my secondaries and kind of, filling out the why this school. And there were some schools that completely surprised me that I either thought was going to be a really good fit and I looked into the program and it wasn't, and the vice versa as well.
Yeah. Interesting. What made it resonate for you in terms of what wasn't a good fit?
I think like a lack of early patient interaction. That's something that's really important to me, especially coming off of a year of only working with patients.
Yeah.
I don't think I could simply sit in a classroom for 2 years and do nothing with patients.
Yeah.
I really like a lot of like self-directed and problem-based learning programs. So that was something I was looking for.
Yep.
And then just like a presence in the general community, wherever that school was.
Yeah. Awesome. So all the stuff I talk about in terms of picking a school is curriculum style and which includes access to early patient care.
Right. And I think location was another thing I looked at. I don't think I picked any schools that was more than, I want to say 6 or 8 hours away from home.
Okay.
That was kind of my max, just because I am close to my family. My grandparents are getting older.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go any farther than that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you ended up with a couple interviews and a couple of acceptances. What was it like to get that first acceptance call or email?
It was crazy. Yeah. So I kind of had a feeling it was coming because they were very transparent in the interview. It was early on in the cycle and they're like, you should have an acceptance or a decision, the first day. So I was actually sitting in the airport about to leave on a trip with my 3 best friends from college. And we're like boarding the plane, like it's boarding group B and we're boarding group D. And I get the notification and I like bursted out into tears. I'm like scrambling to make these phone calls because the plane's about to take off. I have to go in airplane mode. I'm like, Mom, Grandma, who's up next? And like my boyfriend works nights, so he was sleeping. So he had to wait like hours to find out. So it was the best way to start a vacation.
That's awesome. Lots of celebrations on that vacation, which is great. Any other words of wisdom that you want to pass on to someone watching this right now?
Sure. I found your videos very helpful. I would watch them with my morning coffee and just kind of as preparation for doing my application. And another thing I did, which I don't know where I read this, if it was in your videos or on Reddit or some forum, but I made a whole new email for all of my AMCAS associated things.
Yep.
It was just like another variation of my name, another Gmail account. And that was really helpful because I never had an issue of not finding emails, things getting lost in spam. And then I was able to turn off notifications for like every other email but that one.
Yeah.
So I wasn't, scared when I got, the DoorDash email,
DoorDash. Oh, darn it.
Oh, darn it.
Food's important, but I'd rather have an acceptance. Yeah, that's a very good trick. One thing that I recommend as well is, like, for me, Ryan, if my Gmail account, which is not it, if it was ryangray@gmail.com, if you can put into AMCAS, and this is really just for Gmail accounts, which most people have, you can put into AMCAS ryan.gray@gmail.com or Ryan with a dot before the N, or like RYA.N gray@gmail.com for the ACOMAS application. Gmail ignores dots. They also ignore pluses and anything after the plus. So I could do Ryan Gray plus AMCAS@gmail.com. Now that's a little bit uglier of a email address, but it works the same because then in Gmail, you can set up a filter and you can say anything going to Ryan.Gray, put it in this special folder. And then everything ends up in that special folder. Even if it's marked as some random thing, it will still end up in that folder. And it's a good way of kind of filtering out stuff right off the bat. So some fun tricks that students can play with Gmail addresses. So Gmail ignores periods. So lots of people will go, my email address is ryan.gray@gmail.com. I'm like, actually, it's just ryangray@gmail.com because the period is ignored. So people are like, what? I didn't know that. So yeah, you could put, put literally a dot in between every character, and Gmail's like, whatever, it's all the same. So,
good to know.
Lots of fun tricks out there. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for coming on and sharing your application and sharing your success. And hopefully students can learn from it and follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.